Hey, it's episode 438 of the 343 podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the U.S. soccer cracks, or rather canyons that exist here in American soccer. Players falling through the cracks. You've heard that 1 million times, except that it's not quite accurate because they're not these little fissures in the ground where you get some ants missing or falling through. No, they are grand canyons that exist. And there's no better example than the most recent example in this Ivorian Coast player who used to be playing here high school soccer, UPSL, very low levels, teenager. And guess what? He's worth over $100 million. Real Madrid is about to acquire him. His name is Diomande. He played in the last World Cup for the Ivory Coast. And what does that teach us about how American soccer operates? What's the scouting look like? If you can miss a player of that caliber, you think that your Johnny or Susie or Mark is not being missed? Of course they're being missed. If they missed out on $100 million player, come on. So this episode is all about that and how we can remedy that situation, improve it, and what is the root cause of it all. Here we go.
All right, Gary, long time no see. Let's hop straight into it today. I want to talk about Yan Diomande. Hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly. If I'm not, I apologize. Yan Diomande, Gary, Ivory Coast player. Everybody saw a lot of him at the World Cup. This guy was playing high school soccer in America, Gary. Was playing in UPSL, the fourth division of pro soccer here. And nobody really wanted him. Nobody cared about him. Nobody brought him into their team, into their franchise. And now, a couple years later, the guy is worth $100 million. Real Madrid wants him. It's looking like they're going to get him. The deal hasn't been confirmed yet as of right now, August 3rd. But looking like this guy is going to Real Madrid, Gary. $100 million player. How did this guy fall through the cracks? Or, as you like to say, the canyons of American soccer? What went wrong, Gary? And by the way, it's probably not just him. It's not just Jan. Thousands and thousands of players that fall through the canyons every day, every week, every year. What's going wrong with soccer in this country, Gary?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the canyons and not the cracks because people have it mixed up. There are no cracks, talent cracks in American soccer. They are canyons. And I've been saying for the better part of 2 decades now, as have folks like Eric Winalda and others who, not coincidentally, are not really liked by the establishment. We have been saying this very fact, which goes against the establishment because the establishment likes to craft narratives and distribute narratives that they're doing a good job harvesting the talent of this country. And in fact, they say that the U.S. men's national team and MLS and the domestic players that MLS have aren't good enough, not because of them, but because of all the other factors in the United States. We don't develop players well. You know, the players, the better athletes go to other sports. There's all the classic excuses as to why you don't see amazing players in MLS and amazing players on the U.S. men's national team. And we've been saying, no, that's a fucking lie. That's incorrect. Furthermore, I'm just going off the cuff here. When I say things like this, the classic response I get from folks who don't know any better, understandably so, are like, well, Gary, where are all these players that you're talking about? These phenoms, these amazing players that could be playing in MLS and aren't playing in MLS or on the national team and aren't. And it's a good rhetorical device that they use, even if they're being sincere or insincere, because if I give you a name, if I say Jonathan Prieto, they're like, who the fuck is that? That's a nobody. Like, you're stupid, Gary. That player sucks. Or if I say José Gómez, they'll be like, who the fuck is that? Or if I say Carlos Hernandez, they'll say, who the fuck is that? Like, you're just saying stupid names, Gary. Yeah. Well, you think those players are nobodies and aren't good or good enough because you don't see them in MLS or having gotten to the national team. So you think that they suck. But that's not reality. They didn't get to those levels because nobody elevated them to those levels. for one reason or another. Either they didn't think that they were good enough because they have a different perception of player profiles, right? They would rather have a Weston McKennie than a Rodri. You see what I mean? And so Rodri doesn't make it. They would rather have a Tyler Adams than a Sergio Busquets. And so Tyler Adams gets platformed and Sergio Busquets did not get platformed. And then I say, well, Sergio Busquets is amazing. Well, who's Sergio Busquets, Gary? He didn't even play. He played college soccer and then never even made it. Well, yeah, of course he didn't make it. Nobody platformed him. Nobody elevated him. So here is just one example of a player who is at that magnitude, right? And had somebody who believed in them, I'm sure, and found another way. And the most important thing, which I know you know, Ben, is that it's strong evidence that what I've been saying, what Ronaldo's been saying, what others who are disenfranchised here have been saying is true. Because it's not somebody who didn't get identified and goes to, I don't know, the second division of Belgium, right? Or doesn't get identified and goes to the first division of Sweden or something like that. Oh, then people could say like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I guess I can see how that happens. But this is a player who's valued at $100 million going to the best club in the history of the world. And how does that not, how does that fall through the cracks, Benny? It's so outrageous that it is strong evidence that what we've been saying and lived and experienced and we know is true is true.
Well, let's do it. Let's really dig into it as to see how this happened or why it even happened. Okay, and first thing I want to bring up is you talk a lot about player profiles and that only the athletes get elevated here, but this guy is an athlete, Gary. He's 6 feet tall, so relatively tall. He's fast as hell. And so then you start asking the question, why didn't he get recognized? Why wasn't he picked up by a USL team or an MLS team? He is a player profile that Americans love. Big, fast, strong, but he's still falling through the canyon. So how does this happen?
Yeah, let me help give people an inclination. It goes back to incentives, which is what we always talk about in this podcast at 343. Show me the incentives, I show you the outcomes. Charlie Munger, world-renowned investor. What are the incentives here in the United States of America in the soccer ecosystem? The incentives are preserve the monopoly, preserve your little power fiefdom. The incentives are not, holy fuck, I need to do the best possible job ever of scouting, recruiting, developing, because our club's livelihood is on the line. If a professional club's livelihood is on the line because they'll be relegated if they don't do the best possible job ever, given their budget, given their circumstances, then there is no incentive to go out and scout like a mother effer and find the diamonds. And if there's no incentive to get promoted, oh shit, I'm a USL club. I want to get to Division 1, MLS or whatever, and I'll get there if I win the championship or come in second. There's no incentive, hardcore incentive to go out and scour the fucking country and unearth the talent and find the talent. It doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter at all. And you can see how it doesn't matter. So this player, Diomande, is valued as what he's valued at, probably going to Real Madrid. And who's accountable here in the American soccer ecosystem for having that happen? Nobody's held accountable. Is there a USL club that is going to go to its go to its scouting department? Let's say El Paso Locomotive, their owner. You think he's going to go down, or the GM or whoever is in charge there, you think he's going to go down and say, hey, scouts, what the fuck? You're fired. You didn't find Diomande. How this happened? You think there's an MLS franchise, because it's not a club, their GM or is going to go to their scouting department or whatever and say, what the fuck? You're fired. Or you think the owner of a said franchise, because first off, they're not an owner of the franchise, they're an equity holder in MLS who gets to operate a team of MLS. Let's get that straight. You think there's an and quote unquote owner that's going to go to the LA Galaxy general manager and be like, what the fuck? How did this happen? How could you not have known of Diomande? Why is he not on the LA Galaxy? You're fired. Nobody's going to do that because it doesn't fucking matter. So this is why the canyons exist, Ben. And this is why a situation like this can manifest itself. And I'll go further. There are countless top caliber players in this country. Maybe not $100 million players like this guy, because that's an outlier in all countries in the world. But there are countless top level professional caliber players in the United States who never become pros in the United States because of the system that we have.
So he was playing for DME Academy, okay, which is a high school academy, but they were playing against MLS Next teams. They were playing against ECNL teams. So Gary,
I didn't even know.
yeah. So is this a case of like MLS being biased and, only elevating players that are within their franchises, right? Or within their youth academies? Or what do you
That's a curious thread to pull on. I don't know if it's specific to Diamande's case, but I will tell you this. Again, public perception dominates the decision making in MLS and all its franchises, all its teams. Imagine that you have a scenario like this. It illustrates that you have failed, right? If you were to admit, you know what, I'm going to get this guy who has never been part of an MLS academy. I'm going to make him a first team player from within the United States and not one of our own players. That's an admission of fault. And it sends a quote unquote bad signal to their academy players and families and their community that, oh, just because you're in our academy doesn't mean that you have first dibs on a pro contract. We might get somebody that's not you and give them their first dib. And so what does that do to the incentives of the youth players and families here? It's not a good look, is it? Instead, the best public perception is every year, let's just give a kid a homegrown contract, or let's just give him a second team contract. And then we could have our little media moment to post it on Instagram and talk to our Muppet journalists and so that they can make the announcement. And then that sends a signal to the academy and the surrounding clubs that aren't MLS that see this is the pathway to pro, right? Come join us. But if they go and get Diomande and not give any of their MLS Academy guys a contract, what signal does that send? It's all public perception, Ben.
Yeah, and look what's going to happen now. An MLS franchise is going to come out and claim him on their discovery rights list and say, "Hey, we discovered this guy, even though he was in your country for 3 years playing."
Dude, what city? Because I'm not even informed of this. I just have the headline view of it. What city was this guy in?
From Florida. I don't know the specific city, but I know he was in Florida. So
because I'd be curious, who's responsible? Who should have known?
yeah, no, 100%. What would his career? I know it's impossible to say because you don't have a crystal ball, Gary. But what would his career look like now, if at 17 years old he gets picked up by Orlando, or New York City FC signs him? How do you think that would have played out?
Yeah. So there's different epochs in MLS and how they behave for public perception's sake. Epoch before 2018, 2019 was if you sign a homegrown contract, you're fucked. It's over. You're dead. You're never playing. If you play sparingly. It's almost a death sentence for your longevity as a professional player, for your upside potential as a professional player. You're dead, okay, in the water. Hence why there were so many people on Twitter back then, hashtag play the kids, because they never play the kids. So that's epoch one. Epoch two is Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie had a unprecedented breakout situation in Europe. And mind you, Christian Pulisic, MLS never touched him. He went because of his dad to Germany, to Borussia Dortmund when he was 15, 16 years old. MLS, nothing. Weston McKennie, again, Germany, early age, 14, 15, 16. Yes, he was at FC Dallas Academy for like 2 seconds, okay? But he never signed an MLS contract. He never played professional soccer for MLS ever. He bounced and went to Schalke in Germany. Those two guys had a breakout. And then that sent a strong signal to a lot of youth players and youth families here in the United States. And guess what happened in 2018, 2019? Dozens of players said, fuck you, MLS. I'm bouncing too to Europe because you guys don't play the kids. I'm getting to answering your question. So in the first epoch, Diomande would have been fucked. No chance. Enter the second epoch, when all these players bounced to Europe, MLS was forced, in no small part, thanks to yours truly, and I have to say this because people don't understand, there's reasons, okay? They had a kind of like a league-wide mandate to play the kids, to stop the bleeding. And they changed all kinds of rules too. That's another episode unto itself, to stop the bleeding. And so they started playing the kids. They just started throwing kids on the field, Benny. Because again, it doesn't matter. No promotion relegation. It's a single entity. There are no clubs. It doesn't fucking matter. Play all the fucking kids like crazy. So they started playing the kids like crazy. So maybe if Diomande got contracted in 2018, 1920, like 1920-ish, so sort of like this, he would have been in a good situation because they would have played him and his profile would have gone up. And then they also started transferring some players to Europe during that second epoch because it wasn't all about playing the kids. They want to fulfill their dreams of playing in Europe, playing at the top level. So they started allowing some players to be transferred. So Diomande would have been good in that second epoch. And then we entered into a third epoch, roughly 2023, 2024-ish, something like this. The kids aren't playing that much anymore, kind of, and I don't know, if you had signed there, you're kind of in trouble, not so sure anymore. They had already sent a message to their academies, we'll play the kids, so they didn't have to keep sending that message. They'd already transferred some players overseas, like the Aronson brothers and others, so they already proved to their academies and the communities, we'll transfer you overseas if you're good enough, or whatever. So they didn't have to prove that anymore. So they stopped doing all of that for a period of time. And now it's kind of coming back again. And with Pochettino's rehire, they're probably going to have to be forced to ship some players overseas. So it depends on the epoch, Ben, of whether he would have survived or not survived. One more thing. He's an attacker, a winger. And in MLS, historically speaking, and still to this day, if you're an attacking creative player, they go foreign for that. They go to Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Europe, and make those DP sort of positions to score lots of goals and, put on a show for the fans. So the probability that you're successful in MLS being in that position is lower than if you're like an outside back or a center back or a defensive midfielder or some of those guys. They have a higher chance of maybe making it. So Diomande it's not good for Diomande.
Yeah, but so even if let's say he went to MLS, they did play him, he's killing it, he's scoring goals, he's not worth $100 million.
No chance. No chance.
Right? You see what I'm getting at, right?
And well, so he's worth $100 million also because of what he did in the World Cup, obviously.
Sure. But along with the pedigree of playing in, for Red Bull Leipzig, but what I'm saying is, like, has there been a player in MLS that started in MLS and moved overseas to a top club like that, but for that valuation of $100 million? Yes, there's, Gio Reyna, he went to Borussia, but obviously not the same caliber and not the same dollar price on his head. What I'm trying to say is, like, we're not producing players in MLS that are moving on to the biggest clubs in the world.
Yeah. Well, Alphonso Davies is the outlier that comes to mind, right? Alphonso Davies, Canada, plays Vancouver. Yeah, I think it's Vancouver Whitecaps, gets sold to Bayern Munich. But yeah, you're right. It still holds. Like, I think he was sold for, I reported, because you don't know unless you know. Reported 15 million. Maybe you can fact check me or something like this. But yeah, he's not worth 100 million. But we have to be everything's in its context, right? It's a lower league than Germany. It's a lower team than Red Bull Leipzig. Alfonso Davies had not played a World Cup. So, I mean, there's an outlier case like that where you go to a big club and now Alfonso Davies is worth a shit ton of money. But yeah, it's not really going to happen here.
Yeah. I just checked, it was for 13 million when he went over to Germany. But yeah, so and also Gary, there were reports, I don't know how much of this is true, that an MLS franchise was interested in him, quote unquote interested, right? But they said that Diomande didn't want to start his career in MLS. Okay, we don't know how much of that is true or not, because that all happened behind the scenes. But even so, if the player is that good, if the player is worth $100 million now, how is it possible that an MLS franchise, like, if they really wanted him, they would be, they could make it happen. No, Gary, with money, with incentives. Why didn't they, though, is my question.
Incentives, Benny. What incentives do they have to make that happen, Ben? They don't have an incentive to do that. And look at further the incentives. What I know the psychology of these people in these franchises also, because of their personal incentives. What if they make a mistake? What if they offer this guy a shit ton of money to be on the team and they get it wrong? See, that's how insecure they are, and they get it wrong. Then they're fired. So why take that risk? You would take that risk if you have that much confidence in your competence as a talent evaluator and such. But there's more to it than that. Let's see.
Well, are these MLS scouts and franchises, are they lacking in competence when it comes to identifying world-class players?
Of course there is. But what I was going to say is there's also rules that the GMs have to follow, the sporting directors have to follow, and it's like you can't. I mean, you can, but let me give you the classic narrative. You can't just go and grab a player that's a nobody out of nowhere from high school or UPSL like this guy and be like, "We're gonna pay you $250K, come aboard." It's kind of like you have these strata in MLS rosters. You got the DPs, you got the TAM players, you got the senior roster players, you got the homegrown players, you have a cap, you have all these sorts of things that you have to fit under this envelope. And so it's not like you can go to Diomande and like start negotiating and be like, we'll pay you $1 million to come be part of us or something like that. They can't do it, number one. And secondly, is what is that again? What signal does that send to the rest of the country and the rest of the franchise and the rest of their academies that you don't have to be part of their academy in order to have this success story? So what happens is their psychology, and it almost always works, is if we don't offer this player anything, then he'll just disappear. He'll be a nobody. He'll rot in UPSL. Maybe a USL team will get him, but who cares? Like he's not platformed. He'll just disappear into nothingness. And then we're never discovered for the frauds that we are. So what decision is made? The decision is ignore it. It'll go away. And even if the player turns into something spectacular, we're not even held accountable because it doesn't fucking matter.
Like we said in the beginning of the episode, it happens probably every day in this country where players continue to get passed on. I mean, you've worked in the space for the last 2 decades, Gary, so you've seen it firsthand. How many players that could have been starters in MLS, that could have been overseas, but no, they got passed on, Gary.
It's outrageous, Benny. You know these players personally too, and now you have a seasoned eye as a coach and in the broader ecosystem. Jonathan Prieto was a special talent, a special talent. He could have easily played in MLS his whole career and been a special talent in MLS and even gone overseas eventually at some point and been somebody. Now, let's put aside the mentality thing because it's hard to judge a player's mentality. Do they have the mental fortitude to go overseas and succeed overseas and put up with all, obstacles, et cetera, et cetera? Put that aside. Talent alone, technique, tactical intelligence, soccer IQ, physical. Jonathan Prieto was a special player. Nobody in our audience knows who the fuck that is. Jose Gómez, Choco, super special player. I'm mentioning these guys because these are guys that you know. I know a whole bunch of other guys. It's it's outrageous the talent that gets destroyed in our country and never it gets elevated.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Choco was the runner-up for Choco played at Creighton University, right? And he was the runner-up for the what's the name of the award? The
Mac Herman Trophy. Yes, it's the equivalent of the Heisman Trophy in college football. Mm-hmm.
So Choco's runner-up. Okay, I think I was a freshman. He was runner-up, and I was watching the MLS draft, right back when they used to do the college thing, and Choco's runner-up, so of course he's gonna get drafted to MLS, right? I'm in class, I'm watching the live stream on my phone. First round goes by, I'm like, what? Like, he didn't get picked. Second round goes by, didn't get picked. They didn't take him, Gary. What the fuck, man?
He got picked in like what's called a supplemental draft or something. And then he goes to Toronto and has some training sessions in Toronto for a while. And they're like, no, thank you. And look, he is in a certain situation, kind of a special case because of what was his citizenship status. He would count as a foreigner, so that kind of complicates things a little bit. But a special player is a special player. You do what you need to do to get a special player.
Yep.
And
I was shocked, dude. I was sad. I was like, what the fuck? Because you would think like the top, usually how it was in past is like the top 3 finishers of that award are 1, 2, and 3 in the MLS draft. And sure enough, they didn't want him. So what about Prieto? I know I think he had a trial with Sounders, right? And ultimately they didn't want, like, what were those conversations or what did they look like when they came to you to said like, no, thanks, we're good?
Well, one of the things you'll hear historically and still even to this day, unless there's like an exception with the management of a particular franchise and their background, what you'll hear when there's an extremely technical / soccer IQ player, creative player that's young, the typical phrase that they lean on is like, oh, that's a nice little player. Because in the back of their heads, they're thinking the most superficial, obvious, easy to identify and manage and leverage attribute, which is the physical attribute. So in the back of their heads, it's like, oh, just to give some context for the audience here. So Jonathan Prieto played at UC Irvine, Division I college soccer. The first year, I think he made first team, all whatever the fuck, Big West. I didn't even fucking know these things anymore. So he was kind of recognized as a freshman Division I college soccer player to being good. And we did what we could to kind of get him a look with Seattle Sounders because Siggy Schmidt, to his credit, kind of was progressive, even though he was, what we always bag on here on 343, kind of progressive. It kind of seemed like he wanted to evolve from the prototypical American coach. So he went, for 2 weeks, Seattle Sounders, did a little bit of preseason with them, and they chose a player whose name escapes me now. Nagel, Nagel, something like this, instead of Jonathan to sign it as a contract. And they said, oh, no, thank you. But why? Well, young player. This was pre-2018 epoch. This was like, I don't even know what year this was, Benny. What was this? The year 2000 and...
It was like 2014.
24. I don't even know. Something like that, or maybe even earlier than that. So as a young player, attacking midfielder is what he was. Orchestrator of the offense. A number 10.
Lefty, by the way.
Lefty. They're like, no thanks. Nice little player, but not the physical tools aren't there. Okay. So that's it, man. Where do you go from there? You're done.
And I can already hear the audience comments. So like, oh, well, Gary, he didn't make it.
He wasn't good enough.
He wasn't good enough. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Who's Prieto? Like, no. But Yeah, man.
No, it's just the audience doesn't have the practitionership's experience. They don't have the practical experience. They work off of theory because I mean, there's countless cases I can recite and they'll think the same way. One thing that might hit home a little bit is if you look at Brian's youth teams, starting with the famous youth team, because that's the one that everybody kind of is familiar with. He built that team at a local youth club called Barcelona USA, which later became known as Total Football Academy. He built an academy there together with the founder, Paul Walker, fully funded. That team, he recruited all the local, principally Latino American demographic, Mexican American demographic, the best players with those player profiles of like a Jonathan Prieto. And they rampaged the whole country, destroyed everybody in the country. It doesn't matter. If you were the champion of Florida, they thought they were the fucking shit. And then they meet at Surf Cup or somewhere else. 12-0, go fuck yourself. Like, no chance. Or you're the champion of New York or something. They think that they're top shit or whatever. And they meet our team in Dallas Cup. 7-0, get the fuck out of here. You know, because of all the things that we've been discussing. So you take that group of players, and many of them eventually became professionals because of the established pedigree over the course of time. Because Brian then migrated them to Chivas USA and then migrated them to LA Galaxy. And then obviously, naturally, what happens from that point forward. My point here is if Brian had instead chosen other players to be on that team, other players who were kind of like just as good, from FC Golden State, which was our classic rival here in Southern California, or Padiadores, which was another classic rival who gave us challenges here in Southern California, or Irvine Strikers. If Brian had chosen those players would then have been elevated and gone on to be professional soccer players at some particular level. But it's just because Brian chose these players to elevate, those guys ended up having opportunities. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, the talent is there broadly. It's who chooses to elevate them that determines their ultimate fate.
Wait, but you're saying that because they were in an MLS franchise academy?
No,
is
it's because Brian picked them. And because Brian picked them and elevated them and grew their profile, and then Brian fucking moved them to Chivas and Brian moved them to LA Galaxy. It's a process of elevation. It's not just Brian, obviously, but it's an elevation process that happens. And you have to have the serendipitous fortune to be elevated by somebody, by some gatekeeper, in order for your future to unfold positively. If you have the unfortunate fortune to not be elevated, there is no system-wide incentive mechanism to find you. You're dead. It's over. If the system were incentivized with freedom, opportunity, and merit, promotion, relegation, those players that Brian did not choose from FC Golden State, Pats, Irvine Strikers, wherever, they would eventually have found their way because everybody in the ecosystem is incentivized to find out, okay, who did Brian miss? Just to emphasize the point, right? It's not Brian, right? But it's the system.
I see what you're saying. So hypothetically speaking, let's say Brian stays with TFA the entire time from U9 to U19. He doesn't make the move to Chivas. He doesn't make the move to Galaxy. Are those players still pros today or no?
It's a good question. I'll tell you possible world lines or light cones, as we like to say in physics. The most likely light cone is Brian keeps the team at TFA, doesn't move to Chivas USA. Chivas USA starts their academy. Brian doesn't go over there. Many of the players eventually will be like, well, Brian, we're not allowed, we can't play in the top league with TFA for whatever reason, so I have to go. And so they will naturally try to go to Chivas USA if they're not allowed to compete in the same league. And let's follow that path real quick. What happens at Chivas USA? Well, you're not going to get the same training as Brian gives you. You're not going to develop the same way as the way Brian could develop you. Your development sucks worse. It's not good, but the platform is good. So maybe you might be a pro. Maybe, but maybe not.
Even if they wanted to go to Chivas, they might not have been picked for Chivas because maybe the
True.
coach values a player profile that was not a player on Brian's team that was not big and fast and strong, but extremely technical, extremely high soccer IQ. But, Galaxy now we're going to pass because we want this, 5'11" man-child that is going to run circles around you. So now, no, thank you. We're good.
And it happened in it happens all the time in many instances. I think you know the story of like Alex Mendez. Alex Mendez, when we migrated to Galaxy, the way the academy was structured was such that Alex Mendez was a 2000 and he was under another coach that was not Brian initially, and he wasn't played. Somebody else played. Some other player profile was played, which is fucking psycho, okay? That other player profile ultimately didn't pan out, professionally speaking, didn't even become a pro. And over the course of time, Mendez, coupled with Brian being there, was able to have his opportunities. But yes, in the first year and a half, wasn't fucking playing, Benny.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And something similar happened to Jorge Hernandez, who is like the best player in USL Championship, should be in MLS, but there's no incentive, right? For MLS to be like, fuck, this is the best player in USL. We should fucking have him. Of the 30 teams in MLS, none of them is picking up Jorge Hernandez, who is the best player in USL Championship. Why?
That's a great question, Gary. Why?
It's a great question, Ben. It's a great question. But this is happening. I illustrate Brian's situation, our situation, just to give you a case study. And it's not even a case study, just to give you an example. But this is happening across the country, Ben. Scale it up to 50 states. Scale it up to, 50 times 10 major metropolitan areas. Scale it up to 500 major metropolitan areas in the United States. How many players are being missed? How many Diamandes, or half a Diamande, or a quarter Diamande, or a tenth of a Diamande are there out there?
Talk to me about the incentives in an open ecosystem. Like, let's just say Spain, How is it possible that they don't let any player fall through the cracks? I'll call them cracks in Spain because they're probably not canyons like it is here. But what are the incentives there to have the best scouts and go after the best players and ensure that your club is getting the best possible player? How does it look over there compared to here?
Well, everywhere across the world, except for the places that don't have promotion relegation, you have the strong incentive as a business, which is the club, to survive. If you get relegated, your business suffers massively. If you get promoted, your business has massive rewards. And that in and of itself drives you as a business to, with your resources, whatever they happen to be, make sure that your resources are properly allocated in the direction for survival and promotion or promotion. So part of that entails, one, developing your own local talent. Because if you develop your own local talent, you don't have to go out of your local geographic area and purchase talent. Purchasing talent is very costly. Developing your local talent or scouting like a motherfucker in your local area is cheap. It doesn't cost a lot. relative to purchasing something. So your incentive is to do that. So your incentive is to have a youth academy yourself. What incentive does the USL Championship or USL League One or UPSL or whatever all these clubs in these lower division leagues in America have to have their own academy and their own scouting departments? Like, really, they have no incentive, Benny. In the rest of the world, you have that incentive because it's cost effective. So you don't want to miss out on talent. Secondly, if the clubs at higher divisions than you, which have the same incentive, mind you, you're part of their ecosystem, they might want to purchase your player. So that's another added incentive for clubs. Get the best possible players possible, platform them at whatever level you happen to be, and that gives them bigger attention, which entices purchasers of your product, your player, which helps your business. None of that exists here in the United States. Tell me
So,
if none of that made sense.
no, it all makes sense.
Sometimes, because
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like I ramble on and on and on because I kind of, and I want the audience to forgive me, I kind of feel like maybe they don't get it. So I have to go on and on and on and on.
We got to keep repeating it, man, because it takes years for people to understand. Even myself, it took me years to understand what is going on, man. Like, and just as you were talking, I'm thinking the scouting departments across the world must be insane with the amount of budget that they put into it, the amount of resources, the amount of people that they hire. And here it's like, oh yeah, sure, we have a scouting department, sure, but maybe it's one or two guys and they go to a couple of games every year, or they go to the Generation Adidas tournament and let's pick two or three guys here. Versus overseas, it's like, this is a matter of life and death, bro. Imagine overseas, you missed out on this type of player, you're gone, bro. You're fired. You because you have to survive, man. You are forced to find the best players, otherwise you won't exist anymore. And here it's like, oh well, you know, Orlando missed out on this player, but that's all right. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
And it affects player profiles too, Benny, because big, fast, and strong gives you immediate results. Okay. But long term, what gives you the best results are the other components above big, fast, and strong. Big, fast, and strong is important. Let me make that very clear, but it's not as important as the American soccer ecosystem makes it out to be. So let me connect it to what you just said. In the United States, the professional franchise MLS scouting departments or you whatever, and it's so minimal and it's so low budget, and they don't even need to have the best people in those departments because it doesn't fucking matter anyway. You know where they look? They look at the youth national teams, right? And then they look at the MLS academies, right? So they look at already the established funnel that exists and they go to the end of the youth soccer funnel to kind of scout, right? And make assessments. But you know what gets to that final funnel is since the incentives are so wrong, big, fast, and strong usually makes it to the end of that funnel because at the youth level, big, fast, and strong has a higher probability of giving you results, winning games, right? So if you win games, who's winning the games? Big, fast, strong guys usually. So those get recruited into MLS academies. And then within that whole structure, who's winning more of the games? The more bigger, faster, stronger teams or rosters. Because technically and tactically, the whole structure is incompetent. So big, fast, strong usually still dominates. And so when the MLS franchises or US youth national teams are scouting, they go to the most winningest MLS academies, usually, right? At the very end. They're like, oh, look, this is the group of players that I'm picking from. So the funnel has already been chop suey like crazy. And the technical players, chop suey. Tactical players, chop suey.
Does the fact that Diomande, he's not American, obviously, does that play into any of the decisions of an MLS franchise wanting to go after him? Because obviously there's rules on how many international players you can have and this and that, right? But you would, and also maybe they're thinking like, oh, well, he's an international caliber player, right? He can't
Mhm.
play. So why would we invest time, money, and resources on him? And he's going to be in 2 years wanting to make a move overseas, right? Do you think any of that played into it?
Wait, from a MLS franchise's perspective?
Yeah, from their perspective as to why they didn't go after him harder. That he's not an American. He's not an American citizen.
Well, I mean, there's roster rules, right? There's international roster spots, but I- again, this is why this is such a great example. Is look at this guy's value at the end of the day, and if he's that good, wouldn't you? It's like whatever. He's that good. I'm gonna make a spot available for this guy. Let's remind ourselves. There are what is it? 30 teams in MLS. They're all owned by MLS. They're not independently owned. Okay. Wouldn't one of the 30 teams at least be like, let's fucking go? Or wouldn't MLS tell one of its teams, go get this guy? Who cares if there's an international roster slot that would get fulfilled? I don't think that has anything to do with it, Benny. I don't think it has anything to do with this guy would want to go to Europe too in 1 or 2 years necessarily, because once you sign on the dotted line with MLS, you're their slave.
So we just finished recording a live, and we talked about having an open ecosystem and how it might not happen for another 30, 50 years, or it may never happen.
No, don't say that. Don't say that. I don't. People are going to get discouraged, guys. We can absolutely make change, especially today in the modern technological era that we live in, way faster than historically speaking. If we're talking about the 1800s or the 1500s or the 800 AD, when we don't have a dissemination of information like we have today, things took decades or centuries to fucking happen, right? To organize. In today's modern technological era, things can happen in the blink of an eye. So, yes, Benny, it could take a fucking forever, but I don't want our audience to be like, well, fuck, it's going to take a whole lifetime.
Okay, so even let's say it takes 3 years. Okay,
Okay. Or
from now,
let's say it takes 15.
yeah, for sure. From now until 15 years, I'm thinking about the American players that are here, that have the capability, that are able to play, but they keep falling through the canyons. Is there anything that can be done besides having an open ecosystem to ensure that this type of stuff doesn't happen again?
Things are better now in the sense that at least we have two more divisions of American soccer that are quote unquote professional. You have USL Championship and you have USL League One. And no, you're not going to be wealthy as a player there, but at least you have those two things. And combine those two things, I don't know what that gives you. Maybe it gives you another 50 teams that kind of around the country are kind of interested in good players. So that's a positive. What's the next step? I'm very hesitant to say we need to support USL because they could very well turn into another MLS. Not as bad, but kind of. And they ultimately aren't the solution. We need US soccer to open the whole ecosystem. But things are more optimistic because we have wider coverage than before, because we have the second and the third division who are willing to pay some sort of salaries to professional players. I don't think I've answered your question though.
No, not. I mean, not really. I'm
Ask
wondering,
me the question again.
how do we stop this from happening so that we don't let or allow any more players to fall through the
Mm,
canyon? And by the way, you just said that we have more reach now. Do you still consider them canyons, or
they
is it shrinking?
no, they are still canyons because we don't have an incentive. All the clubs don't have an incentive to pursue excellence and to be excellent. People in those clubs will disagree with me because they themselves feel some sort of pressure, right, to be good at their jobs. The problem is that those people in those jobs probably shouldn't even be in the jobs to begin with. So they feel pressure because they're incompetent in many, not all respects, but in many respects. You actually, if you're working in this ecosystem, there is a significant probability that you don't deserve to be working in this ecosystem. That's a rough thing to swallow because we don't have an ecosystem that is merit based. There are all kinds of other factors in play as to why you have the job that you have.
Yeah. Well, and it goes to what we just talked about, right? With Greg Berhalter's comments of saying, well, no, Gary, there is still pressure because if you don't perform, you're going to be fired. Or if you don't perform as a player, you're going to get cut from the team. And it's not true in the sense that if you look at everywhere else around the world, it's night and day, basically, compared to there. But you're right. I mean, those many coaches that are currently head coaches of MLS probably have no business being there and have been handed the jobs because of personal connection or the way that they speak positively about the league. And they've kissed a ring for the last 10, 15 years. So now they are in a position to be a head coach.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to assess. You just don't know who's good and who's not because we don't have a meritocratic system. I'm sure there are a lot of people who do merit being in MLS positions, who do merit being in USL positions, but we as the public and owners and everybody, you have no real way of judging who merits it and who doesn't. Hey, a USL coach or a USL scout or a USL general manager or whatever, how did you get your job? Maybe you were quote unquote good at your prior position that was at a quote unquote lower level. But what does that mean? If you look at the coaching perspective, it could mean that you just recruited big, fast, strong guys at the youth level, and that works at the youth level. And so you won a lot of games. And so the USL thought, well, this guy wins a lot of games. Let's get this guy. But he actually is an incompetent buffoon. And he was successful at the youth level because he hired and got big, fast, strong players. Or he was hired at a prestigious youth club, MLS Academy, you name it, whatever, MLS Next, whatever, because he was a good little boy and obeyed. And because he was a good little boy and obeyed, he got the A team at an MLS Next club or an MLS Academy. And just because you have that badge, the best players are going to come to you regardless. Best players in quotes, again, in quotes, right? Big, fast, strong in quotes. And so, of course, you're going to win games. It has nothing to do with your coaching competence. You might be a complete buffoon, but you win games. And so a USL owner, general manager, or MLS owner, general manager, whoever, who has no capacity for discernment because they're not soccer people, might be like, well, this guy won a youth national championship, or he's always in contention for, these sorts of things. He must be good. He wins a lot of games at the youth level. Let's give him a shot. So the system doesn't filter organically who is who in the ecosystem. That is the problem, Ben.
So if this is happening at a large scale to the players, is it also happening to coaches as well? That
Totally.
phenomenal coaches are not being elevated in the system.
100%. Phenomenal coaches, phenomenal operators that are not coaches, not players. It could be potential sporting directors, technical directors. It could be non-sporting things, business people. It could be anything. Any position that you can think of in the soccer ecosystem, the system does not filter appropriately.
Crazy.
Ben. But you're starting to see it even more than you already have seen it.
Yeah, as you're speaking, I have like freaking light bulbs going off in my head. I'm like, fuck, man, it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's crazy. The whole thing's contaminated.
In our country, man, a country full of fucking money and power and resources, and we can't compete on the global stage. It's sickening, honestly, bro.
No, imagine knowing all this stuff and then how sickened you are when you see somebody who has no experience in any of these things, never been a practitioner, never coached, never did anything at all. At all. They're a fan, a supporter, or a media person. They have no clue. And they're like, oh, it's because our best athletes choose NFL and NBA. Imagine how sickening that is. Worse, imagine somebody, a coach, actually, imagine a practitioner who says that to you. Oh, it's because imagine an MLS scout or an MLS general manager or an owner or saying, oh, it's because, we don't have the best athletes. You can kind of accept to a certain degree, it's different if a fan, right? Somebody who's in the stadium, one of the plebs kind of saying, you're like, okay, well, you're ignorant. Well, I can't blame you. It sucks. I don't like it that you say that, but you don't know any better. But imagine somebody who actually has been working in the space saying that. It's gross. It is a red flag that you are one of the ones who did not merit getting to the position that you're in.
Yeah, I don't know how these people live with themselves, man. I know how
But
the
they don't know. I don't think they know, Ben.
I know how the owners lives with themselves because of course they're protecting their money, they're parking their money, sure. But imagine a coach or a former MLS player who's now in the media. Gary, you tell me that they don't know, bro. That the problem is that we don't have an open ecosystem. You're telling me that Taylor Chalman doesn't know that we need promotion? He knows, bro. Come on.
I think you picked the one guy that maybe I think knows, which I don't know if that makes it better or worse. I feel like it makes it worse. I feel like it makes it worse if he knows and he still goes along with it.
Or even like a Greg Berhalter, or any coach in MLS. You don't think you don't think they're smart enough to put two and two together that every country that's successful at football around the world has an open ecosystem, has promotion relegation, and we don't have it here. You don't think they're putting the pieces together? Come on, bro.
Yeah. Two routes. One, so much indoctrination that you don't know. It's possible. And route two, and this is the filthy one, and you're just like, fuck it, I don't care. I only care about myself. Care about myself. I care about my son. Oh, that's what we need to talk about. We're rolling up on the 1 hour mark. We can't miss out. We've been talking about Diomande and using Diomande's situation to kind of talk about the canyons, right? I think it's important. Maybe it's another topic, but I'll touch on it now. To talk about the nepotism, if we talk about Reina, if we talk about Berhalter, if we talk about a certain cohort of players, now Greg Vanney's kid, I don't know if you saw this, right? Greg Vanney's kid at the LA Galaxy. Greg Vanney's the coach of the LA Galaxy. His kid has been in the academy since he became the coach, played for the second team, got contracted with the second team, and now he's on loan to Real Betis. Obviously, he's going to be on the second team of Real Betis. Let's not confuse it with the first team of Betis. But it's curious how these kids or players have that added benefit where they're allowed, right, to go overseas. They're among the small cohort who's allowed to go overseas and elevated. So that's an added component as to who makes it and who doesn't make it. Gio Reyna, his dad, we all know Claudio Reyna. I thought he was one of the best U.S. men's national team players of all time. Was the sporting director of New York City FC. His kid, Gio Reyna, was in the New York City FC Academy for a couple of years, ever since he became the sporting director, and never signed an MLS homegrown contract. Went to Borussia Dortmund. Why did MLS allow that to happen? If your last name is not that, Are you allowed to happen? Are you allowed for that to happen and elevated as much as Gio was elevated? It's a question for people to think about. And he goes overseas. It doesn't work out on Dortmund. Then he gets loaned Nottingham Forest. Doesn't work out. Goes back to Dortmund. Doesn't work out. Goes to Borussia Mönchengladbach. Doesn't work out. Now he's today, right? It was announced he's signing for French League One side Strasbourg. We'll see what happens. But look at all the opportunities that he is afforded. Not just starting with the last name, right? Because you're allowed to escape MLS in the first place. And then with Berhalter, another MLS guy, has him on the senior men's national team. And just the fact of being on the senior men's national team keeps giving you club opportunities. Even if you fail in the first one, even if you fail in the second one, even if you fail in the third one. Does that make sense, Benny? Because at Borussia, he was not playing. Nottingham Forest did not play. Go back to Borussia, does not play. Usually that kills your career. But since you're on the senior men's national team, your career continues. Sebastian Berhalter. And I don't want to take merit away from the players themselves. They are very good players. Let me be very clear. Very good players. They deserve everything that they get. No problem. But there's a difference. Because that same situation, your last name is not Reina, you don't exist. Sebastian Berhalter, elevated, gets his move overseas. And people say, oh, Gary, it's because he was on his last year of his contract. And so they had no choice. Vancouver had no choice but to actually sell him. Otherwise, he would have been able to go for free a year from now. Well, you know what? If your last name is not Berhalter, first off, you would not have been elevated to the point you were so far. And secondly, they would just ground you and destroy your career. They allow it to happen because Daddy is a good little boy, good company man. And they moved Berhalter to Middlesbrough or whatever he got sold to. Cool. And Berhalter then comes out and says, oh, promotion relegation. I don't think that's right. Yeah, it's a good company boy. Thank you for letting my son leave. I'll do you a solid also. You see, so there's all these other mechanisms in play, Ben. I wanted to connect that one last thing to the Diomande issue because it matters.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, but I know some people will comment like, oh, well, what about, McKennie? Why was he allowed to leave? He was in FC Dallas system. Why was he allowed to leave? Or Freeman, he was with Orlando. Why did they allow him to leave,
Well, McKennie didn't sign a pro contract ever.
Right.
McKennie never signed a pro contract with MLS. He never played pro with MLS. And when McKennie left, there was no such thing as training compensation and solidarity payments here in American soccer. In fact, MLS always fought against training compensation and solidarity payments with U.S. soccer and forced U.S. soccer to reject this whole notion. And in 2018, 2019, which is after McKennie left, a year, 2, 3 after McKennie left, when dozens of MLS potential homegrowns left for Europe and did not sign MLS contracts, then MLS changed their tune. Like, you know what? We need to instantiate training compensation here. Because if we instantiate training compensation, then all these academy players won't be able to leave for free. Because the clubs that want them overseas will have to pay us, MLS, hundreds of thousands of dollars if they want our academy player. I had to throw that in there, Benny. You brought up those fools.
For sure. No, because I know somebody's gonna make a smart comment in the comments of, Gary, you don't know what you're talking about. Look at these guys. Or look at this guy. Look at that guy.
Yeah. Well, guys, I'm sure I have some blind spots. I'm very cautious. I'm very careful. But of the things I have personal experience with, deep subject matter practitionership in, I'm gonna come hard at you. And what makes you think that you know more than I do? You who think about credentials, right? Well, this person has this credential and this person has this credential, and you make your decisions based on credentials. or history or resume or whatever, why don't you consider your personal credentials and experience in the space and try to compare them to mine? And then why don't you do that before you say something stupid? No, I'm not going to do that because I'm a special case. I know what I'm fucking talking about, even though I've never run a fucking soccer business, even though I've never been a coach, even though I've never transferred players to Europe, even though I've never dealt with MLS corporate, even though I've never dealt with MLS franchises. No, I still know better than you do. I'm different, Gary. I get to comment.
All right, Gary, good spot to end it right there. I like.
No,
Leave-
the place that ended, Benny, bring us home with the canyons in the country. Are there canyons in the country?
You tell me, Gary. You're the fucking expert on this. Of course, there can.
Pinche. Well, clearly we missed a $100 million value player.
There we go. If it hasn't been clear, I don't know how else more we can paint a better picture for you. Look at Diomande. The state of American soccer, guys. Here we are.
Yes, indeed. And because our audience are coaches and parents, don't be sad. It's just be eyes wide open. And then once your eyes are wide open, you can make better decisions. That's all. Nothing else. We're here to try to enable you to make better decisions. That's it. Yes, there are canyons. Yes, it sucks. But knowing that and knowing why that exists enables you to better make decisions for you as a coach or you as a parent or you as a media person. If you indeed, as a media person, care about the truth. Because maybe you don't care about the truth. You just want to advance one way or another.
True. No, Gary, a lot of people reach out to us to say, listen, I hear what you guys are saying. I see the problems you're saying, but the reality is my kid lives in this ecosystem. What do I do? You know, like even one of Brian's former players, his son, I'm not going to say his name or the name, but just signed to an MLS franchise academy. And then immediately he messaged me like, hey, like, can you talk to Gary? Like, what should I do? You know what I'm saying? Because people need help, man. The reality is this is the situation. This is where we live. This is what the system is. And people need help navigating through it, man. Because it is it's a maze, bro. It's a never ending maze.
It's a jungle, man.
I like it. It's a maze with no exit, bro.
No, yeah. I think you're better off with the truth than not the truth. Maybe I'm wrong. Ignorance is bliss.
All right. Appreciate
All right,
you.
kiddo.
That was a fun one. All right, everybody. Till next time. I'll see you on Monday, huh?
We'll see you on Monday again.